You open your eyes to the pale, winter blue light filtering through a crack in the shutters. The room smells faintly of damp wood and last night's smoky fire. Outside, the world is silent in that heavy, snow-muffled way that makes sound feel like it's been wrapped in wool. You pull the thin blanket tighter around your shoulders. Though blanket might be too generous, it's more like a stitched-together suggestion of warmth. A draft slithers in under the door, testing your toes. Somewhere in the house, someone coughs a deep, chesty sound that promises to linger for weeks. It's the middle of a medieval winter, and you, dear listener, have drawn the short straw of history. You're alive in an age when central heating is still several centuries away. Insulated windows are a fantasy, and the only hot beverage available is weak ale that's been sitting in a wooden tankard since dawn. You're about to step into a day that you probably won't make it through. At least not without your nose freezing into a shape you'll never get back. Before we wander further into this frostbitten reality, here's your gentle reminder to like and subscribe so I can keep spinning these sleepy tales for you while you slowly melt into your pillow. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it where you are? I like to imagine our little circle of listeners scattered across the globe, bundled in blankets of our own, pretending the wind outside is someone else's problem. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You shuffle toward the door, each step making the old planks groan in protest. The air bites at your cheeks, a reminder that in the medieval world, going outside is something you think twice about between November and April. Your boots are stiff, the leather hardened from yesterday's snow. The street greets you with a metallic tang of frost and the distant clink of someone breaking ice to get water. It's market day, though market is an ambitious word for the scattering of stalls huddled together like they're trying to keep each other warm. A woman sells turnips so shriveled they look like they've been having an existential crisis. A man offers wool hats in suspiciously mismatched sizes, possibly knitted while he was distracted. Somewhere in the corner, a single basket of apples glows red like forbidden treasure. Historical fact: in much of medieval Europe, fresh produce in winter was almost non-existent unless you'd stored it in a root cellar. Salted meat, dried beans, and bread were the backbone of the cold season's diet, and by February, even those could run low, an obscure tidbit for you. Some households hung strips of bacon from the rafters, partly for storage, partly to brag about how much they had left. You can imagine the envy. Historians still debate whether winters back then were truly colder than today, or whether life just felt harsher because heating was so primitive. You might think it's the same difference, but not when you're the one standing here, watching your own breath drift away like a tiny ghost trying to escape this timeline. Asterisk, your fingers are already stiff, and it's not even noon. You stop at a stall where a barrel of salted fish rests under a crust of ice. The merchant looks at you, then at your coin purse, as if trying to guess whether you can afford the smell alone. You pass. Somewhere down the street, a bell tolls. It's not for church this time, just the town crier announcing news in a voice that's half yell, half complaint. You wander closer and catch fragments. A traveling merchant lost to the snow, a local miller's grain store frozen solid, and a warning to keep your animals inside lest they be taken by the hungry night. The phrase lands in your mind and lingers. You follow the edge of the square where the snow has been trampled into something halfway between slush and mystery substance. Children dart past you in ragged cloaks, throwing clumps of ice that might generously be called snowballs. One hits a passing cart, startling the donkey enough to make it bray. For a moment, the sound feels louder than the whole sky. Fact of the day: during the medieval period, many animals actually shared living quarters with their owners in winter, not out of affection, but practicality. The body heat from cows, goats, or pigs could keep a home just warm enough to make frostbite wait a little longer. Odd little cultural tidbit: in some parts of northern Europe, people wore earcaps that tied under the chin, basically medieval earmuffs that made you look like you were about to audition for the role of cozy squirrel. Historians still debate whether these street markets were truly bustling in deep winter, or whether records exaggerate the activity to make towns seem more prosperous. Standing here, watching the wind chase a scrap of cloth down the lane, you suspect reality leaned more toward half-asleep survival mode. You turn toward the bakery, if you can call it that. The smell of bread is faint but magnetic. You step inside, where the heat from the oven feels like a miracle. The baker, a broad man with flour on his eyebrows, hands you a loaf that's still warm. You hold it close, not to eat yet, but to feel. The warmth of the bread clings to your fingers longer than you expect. You wander away from the square, taking the narrow street that curves like it's unsure where it's going. The snow here lies deeper, undisturbed except for the tracks of some small animal, fox, maybe, or an extremely confident cat. The houses lean toward each other, their upper stories almost touching, as though conspiring to keep the cold out. You can smell wood smoke seeping from gaps in the walls, mingling with the faint tang of cabbage soup. Your boots crunch in a rhythm that feels almost meditative. Then you hear it, the creak of a cartwheel behind you. You turn to see a man hauling firewood, each log coated in frost like sugar. His breath hangs in the air, the only sign of movement in a scene that could pass for a painting. He pauses to shift the load and mutters something about another long night. Here's your fact. Firewood was the medieval equivalent of gold in winter. Without enough, families faced nights so cold that water froze inside the house. Poorer households often burned peat or even dried animal dung when wood was scarce. A strange tidbit: some people believed certain types of wood, like rowan, offered protection against evil spirits when burned, making their fires both practical and supernatural insurance policies. Historians still debate whether rural winters were easier than urban ones. In the countryside, there was space for more fuel and food storage. In towns, there was at least the comfort of human closeness. Looking at the frost-laced emptiness of this street, you think comfort might be overselling it. You pass a door with a faint carving of a sun above it, half hidden under snow. The symbol tugs at your memory. You saw it earlier on the main road, painted on a sign. A reminder that even here, in the heart of winter, someone wants to remember warmth. Asterisk, by late afternoon, the light is already fading. The sky shifts from pale blue to the dim silver of a candle's last breath. You pull your cloak tighter, the fabric stiff from earlier frost. You find yourself back near the edge of town, where the buildings give way to open fields. Snow stretches unbroken toward the tree line, the horizon blurred in a white haze. In the distance, a lone shepherd moves slowly across the slope, wrapped so thickly in wool he looks like a mobile haystack. His flock huddles together, a single dark knot against the landscape. Fact to store away: sheep and goats were winter survivors. Their wool and milk vital to keeping communities alive. In especially harsh years, villagers would pool resources to keep breeding animals alive, even if it meant going hungry themselves. Unusual tidbit: in some regions, people gave their livestock protective names in winter, calling a goat fortune, or a cow, blessing as if daring the season to take them. Historians still debate how much of this naming tradition was genuine belief, and how much was a kind of rural inside joke. After all, you can imagine someone saying, "Don't let blessing wander into the woods," with just enough irony to warm them on a cold day. As you watch the shepherd, you notice the wind pick up sharp slicing, carrying tiny crystals of ice that sting your cheeks. You turn back toward town, where the first lamps are flickering to life. The streets you walked earlier seem quieter now, as if the day has decided it's had enough. Remember the bakery. Its doorway glows like an ember. In the dim, the baker is sweeping snow from his step, the warm smell of bread still spilling into the street. You duck inside the bakery again, mostly to escape the wind. The warmth feels almost decadent after the day's cold. The baker nods at you and offers a seat near the oven. A wooden bench creaks under your weight. The heat from the stones seeps through your clothes, coaxing your muscles to unwind. He sets a small cup in front of you, spiced ale, warm enough to steam in the cool air. The taste is earthy, a little sharp, but it spreads heat through your chest. Outside, the wind howls against the shutters, the kind of sound that makes you glad to be anywhere but out there. Today's fact: in medieval winters, warm drinks were rare luxuries. Spices like cinnamon or cloves were expensive imports, and when they did appear, it was often in the homes of the wealthy or in special communal gatherings. Curious tidbit: some medieval folk believed that drinking warm ale before bed could ward off nightmares. Science has yet to confirm this, though it probably helped you sleep if you had enough of it. Historians still debate whether these spice traditions trickled down to poorer townsfolk over time, or whether they remained a firmly elite habit. Sitting here, the cup warming your hands, you're just glad you're one of the lucky ones tonight. The baker hums to himself as he works, the oven's glow flickering across the walls. You lean back, listening to the crackle of wood and the gentle thump of dough being shaped. The day outside fades into memory, and for the first time since morning, you feel the chill leave your bones. Asterisk the next morning, you wake to the sound of something soft and steady snow falling against the shutters. Not the blizzard kind that howls its arrival, but the quiet, persistent kind that sneaks in overnight, piling up without ceremony. You pull yourself from the bench where you dozed off near the bakery's oven. The baker's already at work, sleeves rolled up, humming a tune that might be older than the town itself. Stepping outside, you're greeted by a street transformed. The hard, trampled slush of yesterday has been buried under a fresh, white quilt. Every sound feels muted, as though the town has decided to speak in whispers. You pass a man brushing snow from his shop sign with a broom that looks like it's seen better decades. He gives you the polite nod of someone who doesn't really want to talk before breakfast. Today's fact: in much of medieval Europe, snow was both blessing and curse. On one hand, it insulated stored crops and slowed the decay of food buried underground. On the other, it blocked roads, froze rivers, and turned trade into a game of wait until spring. A little cultural curiosity: in certain alpine villages, children were told that walking in fresh snow before it had settled would disturb the spirits sleeping beneath it. Whether this was genuine belief or just a clever way to keep paths tidy, historians still debate. As you head toward the edge of town, you pass the same sun-carved door you noticed days ago. This time, a bundle of dried herbs hangs from the lacrysmary, maybe or something stronger. It smells faintly medicinal, as though meant to fend off more than just the cold past the last row of houses. The fields stretch silent and white. You see a line of figures in the distance, moving slowly toward the forest. Wood gatherers, no doubt, their sleds trailing behind them. You think of joining them, then remember yesterday's wind and decide that someone else's firewood is an admirable cause, but not yours. Asterisk midday brings a rare patch of sunlight, spilling weak gold across the rooftops. You follow it toward the small square where the market should be, though today it's thinner than usual. A few stubborn vendors are there. The wool hat seller from before, now bundled in so many layers he looks like he might roll away if he leaned wrong. The turnip woman, her wares just as wrinkled as last time. And one optimistic man trying to sell fishing hooks, though every nearby river is frozen solid. Fact to pocket. Ice fishing was indeed practiced in medieval times, but mostly in regions accustomed to long freezes. In milder areas, frozen rivers were more an obstacle than an opportunity. Unusual tidbit: some communities had special winter fairs on frozen rivers, complete with food stalls, music, and games if the ice was thick enough. These events could turn a dreary season into something almost celebratory. Historians still debate whether these fairs were widespread in the Middle Ages or largely a later phenomenon of colder centuries. Judging by the lack of music here, your current town leans more toward mild gloom than winter carnival. A gust of wind sends snow spiraling across the square, and you duck into a narrow alley for shelter. The alley smells faintly of smoke and something sweet, honey maybe. Following the scent, you find a woman ladling warm honey water into small clay cups. She tells you it's for the throat and the heart, which could mean healing, or romance, or simply not freezing before supper. You take a cup, feeling the warmth seep into your fingers. The sweetness lingers on your tongue as you step back into the sunlight, which now feels just a bit more generous. Asterisk, the afternoon drifts by in slow motion. You find yourself wandering the same paths as before, but the snow makes them feel new soft edges where there were hard cobbles, blank spaces where yesterday's footprints have been erased. Near the old well, you see two boys lowering a bucket, their breath clouding the air like small, impatient dragons. They pull up the bucket quickly, careful not to let it freeze in the shaft. The water is shockingly clear, a mirror to the pale sky. Fact for today: in winter, wells could freeze at the surface, forcing people to break ice daily to reach water. In colder regions, some households kept water indoors in barrels to avoid this chore. Odd little cultural note: in certain regions, people would bless their wells at midwinter, tossing in herbs, coins, or even bread to keep the water pure. Until spring. Historians still debate whether these blessings were rooted in Christian ritual, pagan tradition, or just very early sanitation practices. Watching the boys guard their water like treasure, you can imagine it being a bit of all three as you turn to leave. You notice something carved into the well stone lipper, simple spiral, worn by time. You've seen it before, faintly, on that sun-marked door and the painted sign in town. Whatever it means, it seems to follow you like a quiet riddle. You head back toward the bakery, where the air smells faintly of rye. The thought of warmth pulls you faster. Asterisk, the bakery is busier. Today, a small crowd huddles near the counter. Everyone clutching coins or barter goods, a skein of yarn, a bundle of dried onions, a few rough-cut candles. You join the line, Watching the oven's glow bathed the room in amber light. Today's fact. In winter, bread was sometimes baked less often to conserve fuel. When ovens were fired, they'd be used to cook multiple items in successions, starting with bread. Then pies or roasted meats, then slow-cooked stews. As the heat faded. Cultural curiosity. Some bakers marked loaves with distinct symbols before baking, not just for decoration, but to identify the family that had ordered it. When multiple households shared the same oven, historians still debate whether these markings ever carried deeper meanings, such as charms for luck or protection. You look at the simple cross score on the loaf handed to you and wonder which side of that debate your baker would take. You leave with a loaf and a small paper cone of roasted chestnuts. Outside, the air feels sharper, as though the day's brief. Warmth has retreated. Smoke from nearby chimneys curls upward into a sky already shading toward blue-grey. You remember the group of wood-gatherers you saw in the morning and wonder if they've made it back yet. The thought makes you pull your cloak tighter. Asterisk, by nightfall, the streets are almost empty. The snow reflects the moonlight, casting a pale glow that makes shadows stretch long and strange. You pass the well again, its spiral marking glistening. Faintly under frost, the air is so still you can hear the faint crackle of ice shifting in the bucket rope. Fact of the night, many medieval towns had curfews in winter, not just for safety, but because darkness brought hazards, icy streets, roaming animals, and the occasional thief who preferred working under a moonlit disguise. Strange tidbit, in some places, people believed that moonlight itself could cause illness if you lingered in it too. Long during winter, moonstruck wasn't always a romantic phrase. Historians still debate whether this belief was tied to lunar myths or simply the fact that cold nights could quietly sap your strength. You make your way back toward the bakery, but pause outside to look at the street one last time. The snow softens every edge, even the hardest corners of stone and wood. Somewhere far off, a dog barks, the sound carried thin and high through the frozen air. Inside, the baker has left a small candle burning on the counter. You sit near it, the bread in your lap, and watch the flames sway. The wind rattles the shutters once, then falls quiet, as though the whole town has decided to rest until the sun calls it back. Asterisk. Morning comes reluctantly, the light seeping in like it's not sure it's welcome. The bakery's warmth is still around you, but the air has cooled in the night. You step outside to find a thin layer of frost painted over every surface. Cartwheels, the thatched roofs, even the pile of firewood stacked by the door. It's the kind of frost that turns the world into glass. Beautiful but brittle. Down the lane, you spot a group of townsfolk gathered around a barrel. One man tips a bucket into it, while another stirs the contents with what looks suspiciously like an old broom handle. You drift closer and catch the sharp, almost sweet scent of brewing ale. Fact for the morning. In medieval winters, brewing ale wasn't just about drinking, it was about safety. Ale was often safer to consume than water, thanks to the boiling and fermentation process, and even children drank a weaker version called small beer. Unusual tidbit, some households had Yule ale traditions, brewing a stronger, spiced batch in midwinter to share with neighbors. Historians still debate whether such ales were common in small, poorer towns, or whether they were more a luxury of wealthier households. Judging by the satisfied hum around this barrel, It seems this town is firmly in the everyone pitches in category. You accept a ladleful in a rough wooden cup, the warmth sliding down your throat. The taste is earthy, with a faint spice that clings to the back of your tongue. As you hand the cup back, a woman leans in and tells you, keeps the cold from knowing your name. You're not sure if that's a proverb or just her personal sales pitch. Later in the morning, the clouds return, smudging the sky into a flat sheet of grey. You head toward the outskirts of town, drawn by the sound of rhythmic chopping. A small group is splitting logs in a communal space, the woodpile growing taller with each swing of the axe. You watch the steam rising from their breath, the sound of blade on wood echoing in the cold. Fact to keep in many medieval villages. Certain resources like wood were gathered and stored communally, then rationed out through the winter. This avoided disputes and ensured at least minimal survival for everyone. Curious tidbit. In some areas, the woodpile was stacked in deliberate patterns, crisscross or spiral both, to allow airflow and to show off the stacker's skill. Historians still debate whether elaborate stacking was a practical necessity or a bit of rural pride showing through. The pile here is clearly functional, but there's a tidy neatness that hints someone's been showing off just a little. A man offers you a turn with the axe. You decline with the kind of polite smile that says, "I value my toes too much," and instead help carry split logs to the pile. Your gloves grow stiff with cold, but there's a quiet satisfaction in adding to something that will keep people warm through nights ahead. By the time you return to the town center, the clouds have thickened and the air has that heavy stillness that hints more snow is on the way. Snow begins falling again before midday. Fat, slow flakes that drift down like they're in no hurry to reach the ground. You follow the familiar path toward the well, curious to see if anyone else braves the weather. Sure enough, 2 women are there, hoods drawn low, lowering the bucket through the snowflakes. Fact for today: snow was sometimes used directly as a water source in medieval winters, melted over a fire. It wasn't the most efficient method, but in desperate moments, it kept households from running dry. A strange tidbit: some believed the first snow of the year was especially pure and could be stored for medicinal purposes. Whether that was true, or just another winter superstition, historians still debate. You help lift the bucket, your fingers numbing instantly from the icy rope. As you work, you notice again the spiral carved into the stone. One of the women catches you looking and says, "Keeps the water honest." She doesn't elaborate, and you decide not to ask. By the time you leave, the snow has thickened into a steady curtain. Your footprints vanish behind you almost as quickly as you make them, erasing your path like the day wants no record of your passing. The afternoon is a quiet one. Most people are indoors, the streets carrying only the occasional figure moving quickly from door to door. You pass a small chapel, its door half open, and step inside. The air is warmer than outside, but only just. Candles flicker along the walls, their light pooling in soft gold over worn wooden benches. Fact worth noting: in winter, churches and chapels often became gathering places, not just for worship, but for warmth. Their thick walls held heat longer than most homes, and shared fires reduced the strain on private fuel supplies. Odd cultural note: some congregations had warming stones or heated bricks, which they would wrap in cloth and place under their feet during long services. Historians still debate whether these warming stones were common in smaller parishes or mostly found in wealthier towns. Looking at the bare floor here, you suspect this chapel falls into the no stones. just stubbornness category. You sit for a while, listening to the faint creak of the roof timbers and the occasional shuffle of someone lighting another candle. The quiet is deep, the kind that wraps itself around you until you're not sure how long you've been sitting there. When you finally leave, the snow has stopped and the sky is beginning to clear. The moon will rise bright tonight, reflecting off the fresh blanket laid over the town. Asterisk night falls like ink spreading slowly across paper. The moon is full, washing the rooftops and snow in silver light. The cold is sharper now, the kind that bites rather than brushes. You walk slowly toward the bakery, the familiar glow waiting ahead like a lantern on a ship's deck. Inside, the baker is closing for the night. He hands you a small loaf without a word, as if it's understood that you'll take it. You settle into the corner seat by the oven, the last heat of the day radiating into the air. Wind rattles softly at the shutters, but inside it's still. You lean back, eyes half closed, and let the room's warmth sink into you. The smell of bread is softer now, mingled with the faint smoke of the fading fire. The world outside fades. You think of the market, the well, the spiral marking that followed you through the days. You think of the cold mornings and the snow-soft nights. Every sound, every face, every small act of survival has become part of the quiet rhythm here and now. As we end this long winter's walk together, let's let the pace slow even further. Imagine the snow falling outside, again not the heavy kind, just a drift of soft flakes, each one settling without hurry. Imagine the moonlight spilling through a gap in the shutters, silvering the wooden floor, touching your boots, your hands, your breath. The wind is just a whisper now, like someone speaking from another room. The fire pops once, then goes still. The warmth in the air is fading, but not gonets, the kind of heat that lingers in the bones. The kind you carry even when you step back into the night. Your eyes grow heavy, the world narrowing to the soft bench under you, the gentle crackle of the last embers. Outside, the town sleeps. The streets are empty, the snow undisturbed, the spiral on the well hidden under a fresh layer. Everything waits for morning, and so do you. Let your breath match the quiet, slow and steady. The day has folded in on itself, every moment tucked away like bread stored for tomorrow. The cold can wait outside. For now, you're here in the soft warmth, in the long stillness, in the deep. Silverlit winter sleep comes like snow, settling gently over everything.